Hey, welcome everybody to today's webinar on research to real-world results, Bloom for turfgrass and landscaping success. I'm April Thompson, Senior Director for Bloom, and very excited to have everyone here today for our presentation. Um, this will be recorded. We'll have a chance for questions at the end. And for those of you looking for an ISA CEU, we'll have information on that as well, shared with you via email. So look out for that at the end. Yeah, so we've got a lot of ground to cover today, literally and figuratively. So I'm just going to dive right in with a brief introduction to Bloom itself. But before that, I'd like to just go ahead and introduce and welcome our speakers today. We are first going to hear from Dr. Mark Carroll, an associate professor within the Department of Plant Science and Landscape Architecture at the University of Maryland. Dr. Carroll's research program focuses on the development of low-input, sustainable turfgrass systems. He's authored and co-authored more than 80 scientific, technical, and popular articles in turfgrass management. Next, we're going to hear from Gabe Gamble, who is president of Capital Sports Fields. That is a full-service construction and maintenance company for natural and synthetic turf. Gabriel studied turfgrass management at the University of Maryland Institute of Applied Agriculture, bringing strong scientific and hands-on expertise to the industry. And then lastly, we will hear from Brandon Smallwood, who has served as Assistant Supervisor of Ground Management at Navy Federal Credit Union Headquarters Campus since 2012. Brandon earned his bachelor's degree in landscape architecture from West Virginia University. And with that, I will give you a quick introduction to Bloom and biosolids. So if you're not familiar with biosolids, it is a nutrient-rich material extracted from the wastewater, used as a soil conditioner and fertilizer. In the case of Bloom, we are produced by DC Water at Blue Plains. And essentially, the whole goal of a water resource recovery facility like ours is to clean the wastewater, keep the carbon and nutrients out of the receiving waters, which in our case is the beautiful Chesapeake Bay. But those two outputs actually have a lot of value. The carbon is organic matter and the nutrients are fertilizer, which basically are what our soil and plants need. So our process, we were the first in North America to put in place this combined anaerobic digestion and thermal hydrolysis technology that essentially converts some of that solids into gas for energy that fuels the plant, and the remaining solids for our beautiful Bloom fertilizer and soil amendment product. That is designated Class A exceptional quality by the EPA and meets the height standards set for things like PFAS by the state of Virginia and Maryland. And it's worth noting that pretty much all of the wastewater we receive comes from municipal sources. So it is a nice, clean product that we're very proud of. And we do have 3 different products available in DC, Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. The one we'll focus on today, or the two rather, are our blends, our sandy and woody blends, and these are really low odor, easily workable products that a homeowner can use. And we see used on things like this high-end residential landscaping as well as public gardens, like this Arlington Rose Garden on the right. The woody blends being an all-purpose substitute for a compost like perhaps leaf grow. You may have heard of that one. Um, we are we sell this directly to homeowners and landscapers, but you can also find that in lots of different retailers around the DMV, notably Meadows Farms. It has a large network extending into Maryland and Virginia. And our sandy blend, that's a favorite of a lot of um, turf customers, including golf courses and some backyard lawns as well. And used very similarly to the Woody Blend. It just has that sand that particularly helps with turf and has outperformed our Woody Blend just by a little bit in some of our field trials. And last thing I'll share is just the wide array of things grown in Bloom. We work with commercial farmers, landscapers, home veg gardens, ornamentals, native plantings, you name it. So it is safe and good to really use on anything that you might want to grow. And that's my brief introduction, and I will go ahead and turn that over to Dr. Carroll.
Let's try that. Better? Okay.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and get my presentation up here. Share. Okay. Everyone see the presentation? Because I can no longer see you. So that's good.
Nope.
Okay, so again,
nope, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. We can't see your screen yet, or at least I can't.
Can't see my screen. Okay. Try that. Whoops. You see it now?
It's loading. There we go. Looks good.
Okay. Let me see if I can improve on that. Has anything changed?
Nope, you look good.
All right, I'll just work off of this then. Okay. So again, my name is Mark Carroll. I'm associate professor in the Department of Plant Science and Landscape Architecture, and I've titled my presentation today, Reflections on Compost Use. And the reason I have done that is that I've actually been working with compost my entire career. When I was a master's student back at Michigan State in 1982, now I'm really showing my age. My master's thesis was use of Detroit sewage sludge compost for sod production on 2 mineral soils. And back then we used to refer to biosolids as sewage sludge. And so I did some work with sod farms there. The question we were asking then is, can you use compost to produce turfgrass sod? Can it be comparable to what you find on mineral soil sods? And so we went through that for a couple of years, and things performed really well. And many things I'm going to show you as we go on were some of the things that we found back then, and other people have found as well over the years. Now, one of the things about biosolids materials is that they were not really widely available until after we had the passage of the Clean Water Act. And the Clean Water Act was back in 1992, and what I'm talking now is about composted projects. And as April had mentioned, what we had was a situation where all the municipalities then at that point had to clean up their point sources. And one of the primary point sources for a municipality is the stuff that gets deposited in your toilet and then flushed down the sewer. And so that process, what the municipalities did is they started to treat that material and turn it into compost. And so there are a lot of different municipalities that produce compost. Even back then in 1982, there were several municipalities doing it besides Detroit. And I became aware very quickly because University of Maryland was doing a study at the same time. Scott Angle, if some of you remember that, Scott and I were kind of doing the same study in 2 different regions. That the material that came out of Washington was pretty clean compost. And that's because if you look at what happens in Washington, what's the primary material that's produced there? It's paper. It's a city where paper policies and stuff like that. Detroit's a very different situation. It's an industrial city, very active in the automobile industry, and so that compost had a lot of heavy metals in it. And so this is just a quick showing you of some of the heavy metal levels we were finding within the soils. That was one of the concerns we had back then. That compost would not be one that would be classified as a Class A EQ compost. Because if you have a Class A EQ compost, and EQ stands for exceptional quality, that means that you have no detectable pathogens in there. They will not have materials that will attract disease, insects, or rodents, so it doesn't have the heavy odors in it. And then also it has a very low metal level. And this compost did not have that low metal level. But at that point, it didn't even exist. The whole classification system didn't exist. It came along later. It came along almost 10 years later. So, but we knew that was one of the issues that we were concerned about back then out of Detroit, because Detroit, the industrial city, not so with the materials produced here out of DC. So there are many different types of compost. One of them is the biosolid materials. One of the other ones that's out there is yard trimming compost. Okay, so yard trimming compost is the stuff that didn't get taken to the landfill. Stuff that got lawn clippings are a big part of yard trimming compost. It's considered the most desirable material in the yard trimming compost because of the high nitrogen content. But they don't really fall in the classification system there. That's more of a concern with biosolid compost. So there's no real federal restrictions on any of those yard compost in that regard. And then the other type is municipal solid waste. And this is where we're trying to get rid of other material that gets generated. Primarily, we're thinking of cardboard type materials. This picture shows you a couple different things. What's really changed over the years is that now there's a big emphasis on incorporating food into different sources of compost. And it all started with municipal waste composts. They tend to be a little poorer in their quality in terms of their fertility. And so what a lot of municipalities have done is they've taken biosolid compost and they've spiked it in a municipal solid waste-based compost so they can have more positive plant responses from that type of material. So I had a graduate student when we were doing a project. She was looking at use of compost as a soil amendment on a big scale within residential neighborhoods. And one of the things she did is she did a comprehensive literature review of the range in which you find nutrients within compost. And if you look at these, we'll just focus for a second on nitrogen. You'll notice that the range is really wide for biosolids. And biosolids are kind of known as a compost that tends to be typically a little richer in nitrogen than yard trimming compost, and definitely municipal solid waste. You can see that municipal solid waste, they're almost always less than 1%, unless you spike them with another material, another food stock like compost. And then the other characteristic of biosolids is they tend to be higher in P than other types of compost sources. It's a general rule. Let's see if I go here. Okay, so I want to talk for just a minute about the benefits, and a lot of you know these already, but I'll show you some data to support that. The big three things that come in mind when I think of compost is, first of all, they improve the physical properties of the soil. Big benefit on soils that are compacted, and that's where we actually did work in that top picture there. We're applying a lot of compost to yards up in Maryland. We're applying 2 inches of compost, nearly 2 inches of compost to these yards that are almost an acre in size, and we're looking at the different change in properties in those. But the issue here is that these are newly constructed houses, and these newly constructed houses around within 100 feet of the house, they really have compact soils. And so one of the ways you can alleviate that compaction is by using a compost material. They tend to be, when you use a lot of compost like that, when you're applying inches of compost and then incorporating it into the soil, you're supplying a large amount of nutrients to that soil, and that becomes available over an extended length of time. And I'll elaborate on that in a minute. And so not only do you have improved nutrient properties when you add compost to it, you also tend to have an improved ability of the plant to extract water from that soil as well. I'll show you some data to support that. So here's some data. We've collected it. Virginia Tech's collected it. I'm going to show you Virginia Tech's data because they did it over a period of 2 years. Here's where you incorporate 2 inches of compost. And this is a standard recommendation if you're trying to improve the infiltration properties of the soil, which really became a big issue when stormwater, all about stormwater reduction. And so you can see here that their infiltration rates are 25 inches an hour when they're incorporating 2 inches of compost into the soil. And that's lasting at least 2 years. Here's the non-amended soils. So you're looking at a 5-fold difference in infiltration rate. And based on that, we thought when we would actually measure runoff that we would see something similar to that, but we actually didn't see that. We saw something a little different. We've done some runoff studies over the years, and these are out at our turf plots here. The ones in the back are the ones with the compost on them. You can see they're much greener than the ones that are receiving the non-composted treatment. But we measured not infiltration, but actual runoff from those plots. And these are fairly large plots. They're 5,000 square feet each, so they kind of mimic a home lawn type situation. Let's see if I can get my thing to roll here. Here we go. Okay. And so here's our data. Now the dark line is fertilized tall fescue. So this is a tall fescue lawn that received no compost, but it's getting its nitrogen from fertilizer. And then the one on the right, the histograms, this is where we added 2 inches of compost and incorporated it to 5 inches, as steep as the rototiller goes. And you can see there's a consistent trend here that every year for 3 years, we're seeing reductions in runoff from the compost amended plots in comparison to the ones that are receiving just synthetic fertilizer. In terms of significant differences, it was greatest in the first year, and then in the other 2 years, there was more variability in it. But you can see there's a consistent trend here across the 3. If you have these average these across the 3 years, you see about a 33% reduction in runoff by amending the soil with compost in that particular location. So what's causing this? Primarily, it's all that organic carbon that April was talking about. You incorporate it into the soil, you rototill it in, and what it effectively does is it loosens that soil up and it reduces something that we call the bulk density. So lower values of bulk density are associated with soils that tend to infiltrate water much quicker. And here's an example of 2 and 4 inches of compost being added to soil, and it's showing you that the bulk density is getting lower and lower. It's getting less compacted with the higher amounts of compost being added. And then here's available soil water. This is what the water that the plant's able to extract. That goes up as the amount of compost you incorporate into the soil becomes greater and greater. And this 4 inches of compost is really an excessive amount. We don't typically recommend that you add that much compost to the top layer of soil, even when you're amending it. So one of the other things about using compost is that it acts as a slow release fertilizer. All right. The general rule of thumb is that when you add compost, that 25% of the total amount of nitrogen that's in that soil will become available in the first year, and then half of that amount the second year, and then half of that half amount the third year. So way to look at it is you make an addition, year 1, 25% available, year 2, 12.5% is available, year 3, 6.25% is available of what remains in that pool of compost. And so this shows you the diagram of 2 different composts that we worked with. I won't name what they are, but neither one is a Bloom product, and they're both based in Maryland. This shows you the amount of, if you add 2 inches of compost, this is the amount of plant available, or this is the amount of nitrogen that becomes available to the plant to uptake. And you can see that with that 2 inches of compost, it's actually way more than we would typically apply with this synthetic fertilizer. But for those first 2 years, there's a fair amount of nitrogen being released. And even by the third year, in the case of the biosolids, you're still seeing a fair amount of nitrogen released. These numbers in here, these are a recommended amount of nitrogen availability for a new, here the first 2 years would be a newly seeded tall fescue lawn. And then by the third year, we'd like to see you apply fertilizer within these brackets here. So you can see the first 2 years, the compost is applying all you need. And then the third year with the biosolids, you're even capturing it then. And then in subsequent years, you would probably need to supply a small amount of nitrogen to counteract the amount of nitrogen that's not being mineralized by the compost. And again, I'll show you another slide in a little more detail in just a second. So 2 inches of compost, that's what you can expect to become available. A lot of compost. Some of the other benefits of compost that other researchers have found is that you get some diseases are suppressed by the incorporation of compost into the soil. This is a particular soil where they were looking at leaf rust severity on perennial ryegrass. They applied half inches of biosolids to the soil, and they noticed that they saw that reduction in leaf rust in the perennial ryegrass. So one of the things about, so how does compost do that? Compost does it. There's two general conceptual things going on here. Is number one, the physical and the chemical properties are being improved by the addition of compost, and they're promoting plant health. And so that plant health is improving that ability, that plant's ability to resist the encroachment of that disease. And then the second thing is that the microbes that are present within the soil, when you add the compost, they're usually good microbes. You know, as long as that compost has been degraded in the proper and stabilized in the proper manner, the microorganisms that are generally introduced to it are positive in terms of suppressing diseases. And those microorganisms are antagonistic to pathogens that cause diseases. That's the general thought that pathologists have about the use of compost. So I want to switch gears really quick because I'm only supposed to go for 20 minutes. I've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Is the topic of top dressing. All right, this is this is kind of a topic in Maryland that's quite controversial. So typically, when you add compost as a top dressing material and you're trying to supply nutrients to it, if you talk to an organic lawn care consultant, he's going to say make a 1/4 inch application, maybe a 3/8 of a 1/4 inch twice a year, up to a 1/2 inch, maybe a little less than that. But if you look at the amount of nitrogen that's going down when you apply that 1/4 inch of compost, it's way above what we recommend in the state of Maryland. And it's not all of it becomes plant available, only a portion of it does. But in terms of the environmental arm of the Maryland state government, Maryland Department of Environment, they don't like to see high loads of materials going down. And so, you know, there's been laws written within our state that have placed caps on the amount of fertilizer you can put on turfgrass. And when it comes to compost, particularly when it's bagged and it's got a number on it, they treat that as a fertilizer. So you still have to be compliant with those particular regulations. So we did a study where we were looking at, okay, we knew that at some point there was going to be a law passed that was going to place restrictions on the amount of fertilizer you could put on turfgrass. So we started a study in front of it. And what we did is, well, let's apply compost at a rate that's legal, at least in terms of nitrogen. And so we thought it was going to be about 3.5 pounds, but for tall fescue, it worked out to be 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So we applied that and we compared it with a synthetic fertilizer, a long-term slow-release synthetic fertilizers, one's called an enhanced efficiency fertilizer. And the thing that we found very quickly is if you want to stay within the nitrogen recommendations in the state of Maryland, just looking at nitrogen, you can only apply a very small amount of compost, way less than what an organic consultant would tell you to apply in terms of top dressing. And so our biosolid materials, it was a 1/16 of an inch. With the yard trimming compost, it was a 1/10 of an inch. That's the most you could apply for the entire year. And so what we did is we compared how those lawns looked over time in comparison to using the synthetic fertilizer. And really not surprisingly, what we found is that the synthetic fertilizer, when you apply that little amount of compost, tends to perform better. And it's no great mystery as to why, because that synthetic fertilizer is able to release all of its nitrogen over the course of the year. The compost is only removing about 25% of it. And so if you're applying 3.2 pounds, you're only getting 25% of that. All right. So a lot of people would say, oh, well, but wait a minute, you know, you apply compost every year, you do over a long period of time, what you're going to find is that it's going to, you know, you're going to build up a big bank of nitrogen and it's become available over time. And we actually looked at this, we modeled this. And if you follow that general rule of thumb and you apply 3.2 pounds of compost every year, biosolid, yard trimming, doesn't matter, what you'll find is that for the material that we were using, with a 25% assumption, is that it plateaus very quickly. And by the 5th year, even though you're applying 3.2 pounds every year, the amount that's being released by the compost application that was made 3 years ago is really small, really small. So what this slide is showing you is if you apply 3.2 pounds from compost every year, the most you're ultimately going to see coming available to the plant in any given year is going to happen about year 5 onwards, and it's going to be less than a pound and a half. It's going to be about 1.3 pounds of nitrogen. So the way the Maryland is set up is that the top dressing is really not going to work as a form of fertilizer for lawns. So I looked at the broom products. I looked at the nutrient content, and based on our regulations in the state of Maryland, here's what you can apply over here. Here's the amount based on the nitrogen cap that we have in the state, and here's the amount based on the phosphorus cap that we have. And you can see that these are trivial amounts of compost that you can add as a top dressing material within the state of Maryland and be compliant. If you have phosphorus that's inadequate or not adequate, in optimum or excessive amounts of P in the soil, you can't make any compost addition at all, just by virtue of having even 1 gram of P in that compost. The state of Maryland says you can't apply it. That's the case in Virginia. It's not the case in the District of Columbia. You guys can go ahead and do what the organic practitioners and consultants have been saying for years, but Maryland's kind of hamstrung. We can only really use compost in the form of to incorporate into the soil. We can't really use it as a top dressing material and expect to see any beneficial effects from it. And so let's get here. Let me go to the end. See if we can get to the end there. Come on. Okay, so my take-home lesson for you and what I presented in a really quick time is that it's a great form of soil amendment for the people that are within our state. In fact, this picture, I'd love to show this, because that first slide you saw where we added two inches of compost, which actually worked out to 1.9 when we calculated it out, is that in that study, what we did is we did not irrigate it. We never fertilized it. We never applied any herbicides, any type of pesticides. And this is the lawn what that lawn looks after 3 years. And it's all due to the improvement in soil physical properties and the nutrients that were released in there. This wasn't a study that we could have all the people in the neighborhood involved in it. And the builder, when he told me, he said, when he heard what we were going to do with the study, he goes, when those neighbors find out that lawn looks really nice, they're going to want in on the study too. And that's exactly what happened, is that they came and every time we'd show up, hey, can we get in on that study? No, we're past that. That was 3 years ago. But I just want to show you what compost will do under the right situation, is that by applying lots of compost, incorporating it into the soil, you can basically eliminate all other inputs for about 2 or 3 years and have an outstanding lawn. So with that, let me see if I can unshare, and I'll turn it back over to you, April.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and Gabe, you good to share? You should be able to just take over from here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And hopefully people are able to see the chat there. Feel free to type in any questions or raise your hand if you're having issues with that. There's also a Q&A function here I can open up if for some reason people aren't able to see the chat. And take it away, Gabe.
Hey, yes, so my name is Gabe Gamble. I'm the owner of Capital Sports Fields. We maintain both natural and synthetic turf fields, and I'm going to talk about how I incorporate compost top dressing into my maintenance as well as my construction of athletic fields. Firstly, why we use compost, increasing improves the soil structure, increasing the organic matter content and the humus in the soil, better nutrient retention by helping that soil structure. The increases microbial activity in the soil, and creating better root growth. And all of that kind of helps with the turf density, and better root growth is uh, hardier, more stress tolerant turf grass. Some of the challenges we face in my industry with soil compaction, this picture here on the left is a fairly newly sodded field where a goal was just left right here, and within maybe a week and a half, they the yellowing, worn out area on the field just from use. Goalie standing in the same place every practice, all practice. These holes. You know, it's compaction. If there's rain or the irrigation sits in that hole, it creates more compaction, more weight pressing down. And we have a high demand for irrigation, the more use on the fields, and if with the traffic in worn out areas, we have less grass, gives more weeds, more opportunity for weeds to grow in. And so compost top dressing, basically it's 16th the legal limit of compost in Maryland spread over the field. So, if you take your soil test and show deficiency in phosphorus, you can top dress the field with compost. In my industry, I use mostly the sand-based compost for top dressing. It helps with drainage in the athletic fields, as well as it moves out of my machine easier than some of the woody blend is lighter. Um, uh, First thing, you get to an athletic field, you inquire if there's a soil test. It'll tell you the soil pH. The pH, depending on the turfgrass species, you want to be a little bit like around between 6 and 7, uh, and it will you can make your adjustments on the soil pH. Look at the phosphorus, the nutrients, the organic matter content in the soils. When you're making these changes, or adding compost or other soil amenities, you want to retest every 3 years at max to see how things are changing, and if you need to change any of your amenities, or if what you're doing is working, it'll show you in the results of the soil test. Here's a picture of a soil sample we took at a field where we were incorporating in the compost with our in conjunction with our aeration. So when we poke holes, it opens up an area for us to top dress the soil, top dress compost in. We use it. We use the sandy blend, as well as we kind of switch off whether we do sand or compost, depending on the field. And So this sample you see it has a all the white specks are sand, and then you have a dark, rich soil going down to the native clay kind of soil down at the bottom. We also use the compost in conjunction with overseeding. Uh, when you have soil on the ground, it uh, will help just create a better seed bed for the seed that you're putting down, giving it better seed to soil contact and stronger turf establishment. Uh, I always use the compost in conjunction with the soil amenities, lime, gypsum, going on to what is in the compost, looking at a soil test not only from uh, the your field, but what is in the compost that you're putting out. If you need to preemptively adjust any pH or salt content to help flush out anything, um, just to give your your grass the best chance that you can to thrive, and to do that you need to give it the best soil. With the higher organic matter in the soil, and just the grass doing better, stronger turf grass, denser turf grass helps to suppress weeds. Uh, just the more grass you have, the less weed pressure you have. So without using as many herbicides, uh, just to give this make the grass strong, give strong base, strong soil. The compost and creating a better, more organic matter in the soil, the greater water holding capacity you have in the soil, and the less demand that you have for irrigation. Here is a athletic field that we picked up in the spring of 2020. This is in Carroll County, kind of discolored and not uniform. We started our maintenance practices, aerating, we had soil tests, put out soil amenities, lime, some carbon products, and as well as some uh, fertilizers. And within a year, we have a more uniform turf grass, really more grass, and a better playable surface for the athletes. We also use the compost in with our new construction. When we're grading this field, we graded out the field. We added 2 inches of the wood-based compost. We tilled the compost into the soil, and we're rolling it here in this picture before a final fine grade. By tilling it into the soil, we're increasing the organic matter, increasing the humus in the soil to help with the infiltration, water infiltration, and rooting deeper. The picture on the right is after our first mow on the field. The more water infiltration you have, the less demand for for irrigation, and will save you money on that end with with water cost or renovations um, in the long run, and taking care of the soil. My kind of takeaway is mechanical practices and compost, fertility, and a plant health plan gives you a healthier root zone and better playing surface. Healthy soil, healthy turf, better playing fields.
Thank you so much, Gabe. That
Thank
was
you.
really great to hear it more in depth, how you get that great turf you do. And with that, we'll turn it over to Brandon.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. As April said, my name is Brandon Smallwood, and I serve as the Assistant Supervisor for Grounds Management at Navy Federal Credit Union's headquarters campus in Vienna, Virginia. Today, I hope my slides and my talk kind of support the information that Dr. Carroll and Gabe gave to us. And I'll just kind of give you a practical look on what we have found using Bloom over the last 7 years. To give you a little bit of background of our campus, we sit on 75 acres across 3 properties in Vienna, Virginia. On a normal workday, we can expect around 4,000 employees on campus. So the condition of the landscape is very visible. And the products that we use are very important, not only to us, but the employees and the surrounding neighbors. Our team consists of 10 grounds personnel, including myself, and we're responsible for pretty much everything exterior, landscapes, hardscapes, beds, turf, outdoor amenity spaces. So how did we get to start using Bloom? Well, to start off, we did experiment with collecting our own leaf compost. You know, we'd break out the large leaf axe every fall, collect all the leaves, carry it to our leaf dump area, and let them cook down for a couple years before we were able to spread it back out onto the turf. Well, you know, over time, our storage space just ended up not being readily available like it used to. The more we built, so you know that kind of went away, and it also uh, was more labor intensive just because of the multiple handlings of the leaf compost. And then really after you kind of screened it and, you know, for that year, you really didn't have a lot to pull out of it. And then we also experimented with leaf grow, which we did like it, but as they became more and more popular, it was uh, just not as available for us. So that brought us to Bloom, and we ran into, I believe, April and Francesca at one of the trade shows, and you know, kind of looked into their story, their technology, and we were agreed with everything they were doing, trying to reduce the waste. And so with the low expense, we felt it was important for us to at least try. So we did, and what we started with was the woody blend. And we did like the woody blend, the way it worked. I will say that for our equipment, which we have some smaller top dressers, we did occasionally, depending on the moisture in the air, we did have some clumping, so it was a learning curve for us to use that. And we kind of went back to April because of some new construction areas that we had where compaction was heavy. And as you know, with new construction, they pull away that topsoil and they're supposed to bring a lot back, but very little comes back. So April recommended and Victoria recommended the sandy blend. So what that kind of helps with is again breaking up that compaction within the soils, and again with using Bloom really helps to build that soil profile back up to what we like, especially on these um, new construction areas. And then the sandy blend, again, as I said, the top dressers were smaller. That really, we haven't had any issues with the sandy blend working through the top dressers. And again, it remained cost effective for us. So currently we use the sandy blend for the spring. Our spring treatments are really just kind of a spot treatment in some bare areas. Our larger operation, of course, is in the fall, and we run a standard operation, turf operation, and we'll bring in roughly 75 tons actually of sandy blend topsoil, and we'll aerate everything and then come back with the compost Bloom, run that out, and then we'll bring our top dresser back in, and then we kind of finish it all off with a slit seeder. And we found that that's the best way for us to achieve what we're looking for in our turf management program. Before last year, we didn't have irrigation, so we kind of depend on Mother Nature to water in everything. And as Dr. Carroll said, the compost has helped a lot with, again, building healthy soils that would help through periods of drought. So what have we seen over the last 7 years? Again, a lot of what Dr. Carroll said. Our pH within our turf areas became much more even across the campus. We're sitting around 6.5 to 7 in our tall fescue blends. Our organic matter is very strong, continues to be very strong in our turf areas because of Bloom. I think the biggest difference that we were able to see and what we received comments on were during periods of drought and how the turf was able to hold that moisture in and that water holding capacity. I think because of Bloom, and also now we run at a 4-inch mowing height, so we get deeper root growth, and all that together has helped us be water smart, I will say. Even now we do have irrigation, we're able to kind of spot treat areas as needed. Again, over the last 7 years, these are some problem areas that we have found in our space. There's a lot of cedar elms right there that would absorb all that moisture. So building that soil with the compost is, well, it has helped the trees, but it also has helped the turf grow. At this next one, the goal here again is not just to create green turf, but really more resilient turf. We have several large events throughout the year um, that the turf can take a lot of abuse. So, it's important how quick our turf can bounce back after those periods. Uh, this area was at our HQ2. The picture on the left is really um, after the new construction came and a few mowing seasons later. Now, again, we've been able to build that soil profile back up, and we apply the standard a 1/4 inch every fall, across all our turf areas. Looking ahead, we really have just used bloom in our turf areas. I would like to use it more in our landscape beds and kind of work through seeing how it would help with plant health. The pictures there, we did have a little bit of bloom left over this spring, and we just made a couple beds and dumped it down and planted directly into it just to kind of see what the annuals would do, and they loved it, of course, with all that organic matter. So we do want to try to work it into new construction projects and see where we can come out. We've been very happy with bloom overall, and we are going to continue to use it as long as it's available. So thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. So great to see those beautiful before and afters. And we do have a few questions in here. It looks like Mark had responded to one. Feel free to go ahead and type in any questions or comments you might have for our presenters. So Ross was asking for clarification on whether or not you can legally apply compost to lawns at a usable level. And Dr. Carroll had clarified that you can incorporate it. It's as a top dressing material that is potentially problematic if you already have optimum or excessive P levels. So, second question here from Timothy Prigg asking if Mark had seen any continued improvements to bulk density and water holding capacity over time, and if the additional water retained could be quantified, saying that it'd be nice to get credit for the improvement of existing soils in the stormwater management calculations. And by the way, we've done our own research on this and looking at different application rates of Bloom's different products, and seeing that water holding capacity. Oh, there's a echo there. As well as water circulation too, because obviously you want it to hold water, but also to be able to circulate, so you get both of those benefits. And Mark said, looking at the long-term effect of adding compost on bulk density and soil organic matter this fall, site has received compost top dressing for 15 years at a top dressing rate equal to 3.2 pounds nitrogen year 1 through 3, or 2.5 pounds nitrogen per year, years 4 to 15. Hold tight. Hope to have that data available by year's end. Just in time for your retirement, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for that information and for that question. We do still have a few more minutes if anyone else wants to chime in with anything. We are very grateful for you, Mark, for presenting this kind of capstone of your career here. Really cool to see that you had been doing this from the start and seeing all the changes over the years.
Yeah, kind of the front end and the back end. In the middle, I was doing something else.
Yeah. Okay, last call. If there are no more questions, we'll wrap it up here and just look out for an email momentarily with link to recording. Oh, one more question from Timothy. What does incorporate involve? I assume that means the ag applications exceed the limits.
And that's using a rototiller to work it into the soil.
And Timothy, the ag lab applications, yeah, I mean that's that's essentially top dressing. I mean the farmers aren't incorporating it. It is land applied. Does that answer your question, Timothy? Okay. He says
Yeah,
yes.
there's an
And
interesting story behind this, but we won't get into it. There's a lot of acres of turf, so they needed to see reductions in the amount of NMP that was being applied within the watershed, and it was easiest to go after turf first. That's my own personal opinion, but they could pass the law and then they could say that they had met that requirement of reducing, because now you had legal mandates on it. So ags are different. They have an ag nutrient management program, and they have to put together a nutrient management program, which is a detailed narrative on how they're managing the site. It's a little more complex than what people in the turf world are facing.
I don't think this came up, but the phosphorus in bloom is it's only 1% water extractable. So that's not really moving. And that we did get Maryland to allow us to make that distinction on our label, even if it's not a distinction in the law. So yeah, for what that's worth. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. As I was saying, look out for an email if you're looking for credits for ISA. There'll just be a really simple form you'll need to fill out, and we'll get that set up. And thank you again to our presenters for this great presentation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you very
great
much.
rest of your day, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, go ahead and stop the recording here.